Today is May 20th, 2008. I am Eric Mishnick, and it is a pleasure to conduct this interview for the Dakota Memories Oral History Project in Eureka, South Dakota. Can you please state your full name, including your middle name?
Ervin Gebhardt.
Okay. When and where were you born?
In McPherson County, South Dakota.
Okay. Have you ever heard an interesting story about your birth?
No, not really.
Okay. Was there a midwife or a doctor present?
Midwife.
And where did she come from?
From our neighborhood out in the farm.
Could you share some of your earliest memories with us?
With the midwife.
Well, just that or any early stories that you have of your childhood?
Well, I grew up on the farm out 17 miles east of Eureka. And that's where I lived all my life till we moved to Eureka back in 1965.
Okay.
Farmed for 17 years.
Okay, speaking of your farm, could you tell me a little bit about the house you grew up in?
It was a two-story house.
How many rooms did it have in it?
Two upstairs, 3, 4, 5, 6.
6. Okay. And where was your bedroom at?
Upstairs.
Upstairs. Where did most of your family stay when they were in the house when they weren't sleeping?
When they were sleeping?
When they weren't sleeping.
Oh, when they weren't sleeping. The living room was the biggest room in the. And between the living room and the kitchen was.
Okay. Who all lived in your house when you were growing up?
Well, my folks and my 3 sisters. But by the time I was born, the 2 oldest ones were gone already.
Okay. What was your relationship like with the one sister who was still there?
Oh, we got along pretty good. She was still in the grade school when I started, so she was 6 years older than I am. But when I started out, she was, I think, in the 7th or 8th grade.
Okay. How did your family keep your house warm in the winter?
A stove in the middle of the living room with, and also a cook stove in the kitchen that we used.
How did you keep yourself warm in your upstairs room during the winter?
Oh, we had a register in the floor from the living room up to the upstairs bedroom. So all the heat went up there. It wasn't bad cold up there.
Okay.
You had to cover up, but it's in the winter time it was real cold, but it wasn't too bad.
Okay. How did your family keep the house cool in the summer?
Open the windows. That's the only thing there was. There was no air conditioning, so kept the shades pulled and keep the sun out.
Did you have a summer cookhouse?
No, never had a summer kitchen.
How often would your family entertain guests?
Oh, maybe once every 2 weeks or so. Whenever we got company, And that was usually in the evening. It's when the neighbors would come and from the east or the west.
What type of things would your parents do to entertain the guests?
Well, they used to sing songs, and us kids, well, like I said, we were, when the parents came up to our house, the, the kids took off and went down to their kids. And that's the way. We played games and stuff.
What were some of the games you played?
Well, cricket and Andy Over.
Okay. Where did you go to the bathroom at?
Outside. There was no indoor plumbing.
How often did you take baths?
No, usually once or twice a week. Depends on what the summertime more often than in the wintertime.
Where would you get your bath water?
Well, it's heated in the stove on the kitchen range. When they'd cook dinner or something, there was that little container beside the stove that you could heat your water in. If you kept it full, it was always warm.
And where did you get the water to put into there?
From the well that we had. Had to carry it in.
Whose job was it to carry the water?
Well, that varied. Sometimes me and sometimes my sister, and if not, it was either mom or dad.
Was there a particular order who got to have the first bath?
No, not really.
Did you have to share your bath water?
Sometimes.
Who usually prepared the meals in the family?
My mom.
What types of food would she cook for you?
Oh, that varied. She made some good macaronis and a hamburger mixed together, and she'd bake bread every week. Every Saturday she'd bake bread. Then, if we had ham around, she'd roll up a piece of ham in the bread dough and stick it in the oven, and that's the way she baked the ham, and had nice crusty bread around it.
Okay. What were some of your favorite meals?
Macaroni, mashed potatoes.
Did you have any least favorite meals?
Cornmeal. Anything made out of cornmeal. I still can't eat it to this day.
Did you ever have to help out in the kitchen?
Oh, once in a while, I'd wash dishes and stuff.
Where would your family eat their meals?
What?
Where would your family eat their meals? What room?
I can't get you.
What room would your families eat their meals in?
Kitchen. The kitchen was big enough to where where we could have the table in the kitchen.
Did your family have assigned seating?
Not really. Whoever came to the table first had his pick.
Did you usually say a prayer before your meal?
Always.
Do you remember the prayer?
Yeah. It was usually in German, but so you wanted me to recite it? Komm, Herr Jesus, sei unser Gast und segne alles, was du uns beschert hast. Amen.
And what does that translate to?
Come, Lord Jesus, be our guest, and let this food to us be blessed.
What were some of the traditional German meals that your mother cooked?
Oh, strudels, dumplings, cheese buttons. Those days you had your own milk, your own eggs and everything. So you made whatever was available. So you had your own chickens and stuff.
Okay. And where did your family keep things like milk and some of the perishable foods during the summer?
In the cellar, down in the well. Our well was 16 feet deep, so we'd hang a can in there with a rope on it and hang it way down by the water, and it was kept it nice and cool.
Okay. Did your family ever make any sausage?
Oh yes. Yep, every fall we'd butcher, and we'd stick the meat in the winter time when it was frozen. It froze hard, and then we'd stick it in the grain, and that kept till the spring.
Okay. Could you describe for me a typical butchering day where you made sausage?
Well, yeah, we usually, if it was cold outside, you had to do everything inside, and each one had his. Usually, 3 farmers went together. There's John Yuns that lived to the east of us, and Jake Leons to the west of us, and so we'd always get together, and that was always about a 2-3 day job, you know. We'd butcher a couple of hogs and butchered half a beef or something like that, and made sausage. And John Yunt used to be the one to clean the what you might call them. German I could say it, but not English. Casings. You know, when he butchered the hogs, you know, they'd clean the casings, and he'd scrape them. He'd sit in the corner and he'd scrape them. They were paper thin by the time he got done with them. And rinsing them through water all the time, and that's what he used to put the sausage in. And the stomachs, he cleaned those. That's where they made the head cheese. So,
And how would they make the head cheese?
oh, that's got some of the best meat that's available on a hog, around the neck and the head and most of the lean meat. And then they cooked the rind and put it in, and then after it was cooked and mixed up and everything, put into the casing, and then they'd cook it in the kettle, and then after it was cooked for so many hours, and then they'd take it out, lay it in a pan, and put a board on it, and put a rock on top of it so that it would press all the juice out of the fat out of it, and then you had your head cheese.
All right. And how did they make the sausage?
Oh, they ground that up and and put it into topping. And the liver works the same way. They'd mixed the liver and cooked it, and then they ground it up, and then they mixed it all together and put it in casings and cooked it again until for a little while. And yeah, it was usually a 2-3 day job by the time to get everything done.
Okay.
Get the hams cured, and then had to smoke them and smoke the sausage.
Did your family ever make blood sausage?
Somewhat.
Blood sausage?
Yes. My mother used to make it all the time. Not everybody made it because not everybody likes it, but I liked it. And it's good. I still buy it once in a while when it's available. It's not available all the time.
Do you remember how your mother made it?
Well, not really, but I know we had when we stuck the hogs, we had one person always had to sit there with the pan and a big spoon and stir the blood so that it wouldn't curdle till it was cooled down. And then then after it was cooled down, then it kept for quite till they made the sausage.
What was your family's attitude towards alcohol?
Towards what? Towards?
Alcohol?
Oh, no, they really didn't say too much. There weren't too many around our way. We were too far from town. For
Did your family make any of their own wine, beer, or root beer?
Oh, we used to make beer and root beer. Yeah. Yeah, sometimes you could hear it pop down in the cellar. When it was curing.
Do you remember how they made those things?
No, I've never. All I know is Ma used to buy some malt for the root beer, for the beer, and then. But you could buy it for the root beer too. You do the malt and make it. But I never did watch it, how she made it.
Okay. Did your family ever make any ice cream?
Oh yeah, lots of ice cream.
And how was that made?
Well, cream and sugar and milk, and then you had to turn the freezer, turn it till it got stiff. Put ice and salt in, and we still make it once in a while, but not too often. Sometimes when the grandchildren come home, they want ice cream, homemade ice cream, so they have to go get the ice in the wintertime, and then we'll make some. I got 2 freezers, electric one and a hand crank, so then we make some, but not too often.
Okay. Where did you store the ice cream that you made when you were younger?
Well, usually it had to be eaten. A lot of it had to be eaten before it got too soft. And you usually only made it in the wintertime when you had ice. Because there were no ice boxes to make ice.
Were there any special occasions where you always had ice cream?
Oh, usually Christmas time or Thanksgiving. birthdays if they were in the fall of the year.
What types of clothes were common when you were growing up?
Bib overalls. And I had, well, and dress pants and suits.
Where did you get your bib overalls? Were they store bought or handmade?
Usually bought. I still have a new pair of Oshkosh by Gosh overalls hanging downstairs in the closet.
How often did you get new clothes?
Well, maybe once a year.
Where did you get your shoes?
At the store. We used to have three clothing stores in town here.
How often would you get new shoes?
Oh, once a year, if not, if they wore out before then, and then you had to get two pair. But most of the time, my mother used to always buy good quality shoes. They'd outlast. They'd last a year or longer.
Okay. When did your family first get electricity?
1952.
And how did this change your life?
A lot. But then it got a little more expensive. You had to buy a new refrigerator and all new things. Traded the gas stove in for an electric one, and so.
Was a radio very important to your family?
Yeah, we always had a battery radio where we'd listen to Fibber McGee and Molly and Gildersleeve and a few soap operas.
Would the family sit around together and listen to this?
Yeah. And it had to be pretty quiet in the house. So
Alright. Let's ask you a little bit about life on the farm. What types of animals did you have on your farm?
we had hogs, cows, horses, chickens, ducks, geese, turkeys. No sheep.
Did you have any animals that were pets?
Oh, not really. It's little. We used to sometimes, when they had little pigs or something, had to take one into the house or nurse it up. Got to be a little pest, but
How did your family gain possession of the farm?
they rented for many years. Then when we moved to the last farm, and then the couple that owned the farm, their children, the old Mike Hove, he moved to town, and then he divided up the land to his children. So after the dirty 30s, when crops got better, and then folks would start buying each unit separate, one maybe would sell first and then the other one maybe sell, and that's the way we acquired it. And then there was some state land in there, 40 acres of state land that we could buy from the state for $10 an acre. And so we accumulated 640 acres then that way.
You slowly buy out people as they
Yeah,
left.
by different. Each daughter got 120 acres, 40, 80, yeah, 120 acres.
What were the roads to your farm like?
Poor. Yeah, the wintertime you couldn't get out. Till to the about 1948, I think it was, when they finally graded up some of built a road from Highway 10 south to where we turned over. And then it took, but it wasn't the best until about 1954. They finally rebuilt it, made it higher, and so it wouldn't blow shut in the wintertime all the time. Sloped the sides. So
During some winters, how long would you be on your farm with no way of getting out?
oh, there was many a time we didn't get to town for about a month or longer. I didn't smoke, so it didn't bother me that much. We had lots of cream cans and a lot of egg cases, and so. But the guys that did the smoking, they come every 2 weeks. They wanted to go to town. Well, I didn't go in because I didn't have to go in because we had enough stuff at home too. But they were out of cigarettes, tobacco, and so that was worth more to them than food once in a while.
How would they get into town?
Well, they had to drive up with the sled to our neighbor to the north that lived right beside Highway 10. And then when he'd go to town, they'd ride along with him. And if not, they had to pull their car up and with the horses up to the highway and go in that way and leave the car set up there.
Okay. What would you do during that period of isolation to pass the time?
Oh, there was always something. Play checkers, cards, whatever. Radio. We had a farmer, we had a neighbor to the north, and they were a newly wedded couple too, and got married about, well, I think a little before we did, and they'd come down with the sled from in the tractor, or sometimes with the tractor, and cross prairie and come down.
What would you guys do when they came down?
When what?
What would you guys do together when they came down?
Play cards. Yeah, that was the main game, was cards, whist or canasta.
What were the positive aspects of growing up on a farm?
Well, you didn't have to put up with no. It was pretty quiet living. Nobody bothered you, really.
Were there any negative aspects?
No.
Were there any other ethnic groups in the surrounding communities besides Germans?
No, it was mostly German.
Alright, let's talk a little bit about going to grade school. What did you want to be when you grew up?
Farmer.
And where did you go to school?
Oh, we had a schoolhouse in Moscow Township, but it was about 1.5 miles from our house. And the winter time we had a sled with one horse that we drove to school with and took some hay along, and we had a barn by the schoolhouse that we could put the horse in, and then the evening we'd drive home again. And in the spring of the year, if the snow went away and if the weather was too cold or rainy or something, we had a buggy with a cap on it to drive to school. Because you couldn't walk, if it was raining, you couldn't walk 1.5 miles to get soaked.
What other buildings were around the school?
What the other buildings?
Did you have any other buildings besides the school and the barn?
Nope, just the school and the barn. Sitting out in the middle of the prairie.
Was it a one-room schoolhouse?
A what?
Was it a one-room schoolhouse?
A one room.
And how many teachers did you have?
One for the 15 pupils about.
Did the teachers ever have any discipline problems?
No, not really. Oh, there were some kids in the bunch that were a little on the mischievous side, but they weren't too bad.
Can you remember any of the stunts that they pulled?
Yeah, one time our neighbor to the west of us, up by a fellow named by Oscar Yunt, he was always a little daredevil, and he pushed a thumbtack over and put a thumbtack on her seat, the chair. But she never did find out, I don't think, who did it. But that was about the only time that I can remember that somebody did to him.
Were you allowed to speak German at school?
No, weren't supposed to, but then when we were outside, we did anyway once in a while. Because that's all you knew when you started school. It's German, so.
Were you ever punished if you were caught speaking German?
No.
What was your favorite subject in school?
Arithmetic.
And what was your least favorite subject?
English.
Were you a good student?
Yeah, it wasn't too bad.
What's your favorite memory of school?
Well, we usually had fun, you know, when we went to school at recess and things. It was just a one-room schoolhouse and lots of open territory, so you could play Andy over real good, you know, and that was, or we played baseball or whatever, spring of the year. The only one thing I can remember is there was a little pond on the south of the schoolhouse, and one spring, one of our students, Chris Wolf, and can't remember who, Johnny Yund, I think, was the other one that went on the ice, and they weren't supposed to because it wasn't froze hard enough. All of a sudden, they broke through, and they both came into the schoolhouse shivering. So that was the last time they went on that pond.
Did they get in trouble for that?
No, just got a good scolding. That's about it. I don't know what they got when they came home, but
What was the attendance like at school?
no, usually there was, I would say about 13, 14 of them all the time. But I got through 8th grade, uh, then the it was getting less pupils, didn't have as many.
Ask you a couple questions now about religion. You mentioned earlier that religion was pretty important in your household. How often did you attend church?
Every Sunday if we could possibly make it. Even after we closed up Salem Lutheran out there, we'd have to drive to Eureka 17, 18 miles. And so you had to get ready and had to prepare for it so you could, because you needed 20 minutes or more to drive in here.
Did you have a special set of clothes you wore to church?
Oh yeah, we always dress up for church. And when we went out to Salem Church there, the wintertime there was no way to get in there when there was a lot of snow. Then we had to go by horse and sled. That's when folks were still out there. And there was a barn there, and you could put your horses in. And
What denomination were you raised?
Lutheran.
What was the seating arrangements like in the church?
Well, the women sat on one side and the men sat on the other side until when we got children, and then we sat together, and then it started mixing. Because we wouldn't let the kids run back and forth from men's side to the women's side. But there was some that didn't, that wouldn't sit together, you know. Well, stubborn Germans, I guess, is what they called them. So.
What language was the services usually in?
Well, it varies. You got served out of Loyola, then sometimes we'd have it in the morning and sometimes in the afternoon. Because that pastor had 3 churches. So.
What would you do if the pastor couldn't attend?
Then we had a reader, had a lay person read.
What language were the
German.
German? Were you able to question the religious teachings when you were younger?
Do what?
Were you able to question religious teachings when you were younger?
No. I taught Sunday school for oh quite a few years. I did, they say, have a couple of students that liked me as a Sunday school teacher, that they praised me for that for what they learned when I taught Sunday school for them.
Okay. Did your parents restrict anything because of religion?
Well, not really. The older girls, I guess, they restricted them a little bit. They wouldn't dare go with a different uh, boyfriend, that wasn't a Lutheran. So, but later on, they didn't say nothing no more.
Okay. Was Sunday dinner different from dinner on any other day of the week?
Once in a while, a little bit, but Sundays was usually noodle soup time, and a lot of times when we had church in the morning, and the pastor would come from Loyola, and we'd invite him in over for lunch. They'd come for lunch, and so.
Is there anything else you'd like to add about your religion when you were growing up?
No, it's we had it about 3 miles to church. If we went kitty corner, but we couldn't drive it because the road was too poor coming in from the. We could go up to the highway and come around the long way. Then it would have been about just about 10 miles because you had to go up 2 miles and then 3 miles over again, and then 3 south again, and then come back this way again. So it made it a long trip if you went by car. So a lot of times we just drove kitty corner and done with the horses.
You've mentioned a couple of times the Dirty 30s. What do you remember about the Dirty 30s?
Oh, when the dust was flying and the grasshoppers were up in the air, some days you couldn't hardly see the sun, that for dust and grasshoppers. And there was no feet, no nothing. So you had to go scrounge up every little blade of grass a thistle that you could find, because that's about the only thing that grew.
Okay. Did your family take advantage of any government programs or WPA work?
Well, yeah, Dad worked in the WPA in the 30s when there was nothing, so you had to do something. So he worked for the WPA and was hauling sand for the county or the state. I think it was even for the state. No, he had a wagon box made out of planks, so that when they had to load them by hand, but then when they unloaded, they could just lift out that one plank, and the sand would run off, the gravel would run off.
Okay.
And we got a few commodities, but not that many, because you had to go to Loyola to get it, and it was took more time than what you got for. There was usually somebody driving around peddling. There was a fellow up here by Greenway that was making Cheerios and puffed wheat, puffed rice, and was peddling it in the country. So that's usually how we get our cereal and stuff. It's I think.
Would you pay him with money or would you barter him with goods?
No, usually paid him with money. And like for flour, my dad used to. Eureka didn't have no more flour mill at that time, but Bowdle had a flour mill, so we'd take the trailer and load up half a trailer load or a little better of wheat and take it to Bowdle, and then they'd make it into flour. So we'd then take everything home. Then you'd put middlings and stuff we took home for the hawks, and they made what you might call like malted meal or just a kernel of the wheat for cereal. So we usually ended up with about 500 pounds of flour for the winter, and that lasted all winter long. And some cereal and stuff, things. So that's why we didn't have to go to town all the time. Sugar, they used to lay in about 100 pounds of sugar or more and at a time, and then we could go all winter long without going to town because you had your own eggs, you had your own milk, you had everything else.
Let's talk a little bit about World War II. How did the outbreak of World War II change your life?
Not much. It didn't involve our family because I was the only boy, and the girls were all gone, and so it really didn't affect our family too much. But still, there was cousins and things that you were concerned about, but just as far as the immediate family was concerned, it didn't bother us too much.
How did rationing affect your family?
Well, like sugar, gasoline, and stuff. It's when you had a tractor, you had to watch what you were doing. It's so you had gasoline for planting time, and sugar was. You usually bought a lot of it beforehand, So if you did ration it, it's that you had little on hand, that you could pick up whatever you had coming, and then it lasted.
Were you ever chastised or treated differently when you spoke German during this time?
No, but like in the beginning of the 40s, they wouldn't dare have German church service no more for a while. But other than that, there was nothing that would interfere.
Did they ever have secret German church services?
No.
What was it like for you growing up on the plains?
Well, that's where I lived all my life. I didn't live in any other vicinity before, So it didn't bother me.
What did you find beautiful or enjoyable about growing up on the plains?
Peace and quiet.
Was there anything you found bleak or unpleasant about growing up on the plains?
No.
What were winters typically like for you?
The what?
What were winters typically like for you?
Winters? Well, you just didn't get no place. You didn't know any better than to stay home. Because the roads, once there were better cars and things, there were no roads that you could really go unless, and once you had a little snow, you couldn't drive no more. Unless you opened the road with the sled and the horses. You know, we used to open the road that way. You know, with put one of those hand plows, tie it against the side of the sled, and then we'd open up the road that way, down one way and then come back the other way, and then you could drive. But if you didn't go to town right away, and by the next morning maybe it was closed right if the wind came up.
All right. Did you have any additional chores during the winter months?
Well, yeah, she had to shovel snow away. We had a lot of snow, and back in the 47, 48, and up to about 51, 52, there we had a lot of snow all the time out here.
Okay. What was a typical fall like for you growing up?
Oh, you were gonna get prepared for the winter. You know, you had to get your coal in, and you had to get your firewood, refined firewood, and get it cut up. And there was always something to do to prepare for winter. And like in the, you know, if you had to get coal, you know, we used to make manure patties, you know, for, I don't know if none of your other people that you interviewed told you that, but well, yeah, in the wintertime you'd put the manure on a pile in a little ways away from the farm, and then you'd spread it out in the spring of the year. And when you cleaned out your sheds and things with the cattle were in, you put it on a flat deal, spread it around, and then you'd put the horses on there and a drag, and you'd leveled it off nice, and you stomped it down with the horses. And then when it was, after it was nice and leveled, then you'd let it dry. And then you'd when it was dry, you'd take the spade and you'd spade it, usually about a spade and a half wide and a spade long. And then you'd set it up on a cross like so. And that's the way you went down the road, and you'd set it up like that. Then you left it set till it was completely dry. Then you'd take it and you put it made a little stack, so you left it set there till it was drier yet. And then when it was really dry, and by the fall it was usually completely dry, then you'd haul it into to a shed, and that was your firewood for you burned it for the winter. You pick corn cobs and to start the fire, and That was a lot of the where a lot of the heat came. Cook stove. You use that mostly. And for the coal stove in the living room, you got a few coal, about a ton or so every year. And that was our fuel for the winter.
Okay. What were summers typically like for you?
Oh, I enjoyed summers. It was there. Then you could go bicycling and stuff. It's
What type of work would you have to do in the summers?
work. Well, there was all kinds of work, pitch hay and stuff. Because there you as long as you didn't have a loader, you had to do everything by hand. It's, we had a sweep that you could with two horses that you could push the hay together in a pile, but then you couldn't stack it. Some people had an old stacker with that they could push the hay on that one from one sweep to the next, and then they'd have a horse on the other side, and that would bring the hay up and dump it on the haystack. But we didn't have that stacker, so we had to stack everything, throw everything up by hand. We couldn't make our stacks as high as they did, but we got along.
Could you describe a typical spring for us during your childhood?
Yeah, well, when spring rolled around, you got calving time came along, and the little chickens, and you had to get ready, set, make brood hens, to set them on eggs, and so you could get. It was a lot of work, but it was cheap work. Labor was cheap at that time.
Okay. What was your favorite season?
Favorite what?
What was your favorite season?
Summer.
Why was it your favorite?
Oh, you didn't have to bundle up and could go out and do almost anything you wanted to do.
Did you have very many trees on your farm when you were growing
No,
up?
one up in the hill from the farm up there was went uphill a little, and there was one tree up there. But after we left the farm, we got married, and then I planted a shelter belt. But I don't think there's anything left of that.
Why did you want to put a shelter belt in your own farm?
Because to keep the snow out of the yard, mostly.
Is there anything else you'd like to add about growing up on the plains?
Not really. Like I said, it was peace and quiet. It was no cars driving like in the big cities and things. There you didn't know what a big city was. It's until we got up into the 40s, and then we'd get to Aberdeen once in a while. But Aberdeen wasn't that big at that time either. But it was still was 75 miles away from out the farm.
Okay. Let's turn to some of your childhood memories in general. What was your most stressful childhood experience?
I don't know. I never had a broken bone or anything. I had But our neighbor boy came up. They had a pony, and then one Sunday he was riding him, and he bucked him off, and he broke his collarbone. And didn't say nothing to his dad. Came up to our house, told me, and he was starting to hurt pretty bad. So I walked along down to their farm, and then we told his dad about it. And then they had it, got on the car and drove to Wishick to, there was a doctor up there, bone specialist up there. So they had to take him up there, get his collarbone set. And
Was Wishick the nearest doctor?
what?
Was Wishick the town with the nearest doctor?
Well, for a bone specialist.
What was the closest town for general medical help?
Well, Eureka had, they always had a doctor. See, they, in 2028, they built the hospital here. And they always had a doctor, one or two doctors here at almost all time. Maybe they didn't have their office at the hospital, but they had a separate office to where people could go to, and different specialists.
When you or your family got sick, would you go into Eureka, or would the doctors come out to you?
No, we had to come in. But, but then Dr. Gritters, he was the only one that would go out in the country. He's the only one that had horse and buggy to go out in the country to if somebody called him.
Did you or anyone in your family have to go into the doctor very often?
No, I hadn't been in the hospital for over one night in 79 years until this winter.
Okay. Did your family have any home remedies then?
Oh yeah, there was always home remedies. There's goose fat and stuff, and skunk fat for certain things, and there's what they call a mustard plaster, that they made for headaches and stuff like that. And so there was home remedies all the time.
Do you remember what was in mustard plaster?
No, I don't. I couldn't.
All right. What was your happiest childhood memory?
Oh, usually Christmas.
What was a typical Christmas like for you?
Oh, we always had a Christmas program in church, and when I was little, then they'd have real candles on there. They'd light them in the end of the Christmas program. They'd light the candles, and then they'd sing Silent Night and Holy Night in German, and then they'd blow the candles out. Because there were no lights. The only lights we had were those kerosene lights that were hanging in the main church, that you pump up with gasoline, and then you'd pump air into them. They were like a mantle lamp almost, that same purpose, and that's what they used for lights then.
Would you get any presents for Christmas?
Any what?
Presents?
Oh yeah, they always had. They always give out sacks, but really went to extremes as far as Christmas was concerned.
What was usually in the sacks?
When that ended,
When you said you got sacks for presents. What were in the sacks?
oh, peanuts, candy bars, orange, and apple. Usually, there's a little of everything. A little couple of packages of gum or something like that. Those days you could buy candy cheap, but they weren't that costly at all. If you came to town and you had a dime in your pocket and you went into the Joe Bender store, you could buy. He'd give you a sack of candy that lasts you for a week. Now, 10 cents worth of candy you could eat in one bite.
Did you buy a lot of candy when you were growing
No.
up? Okay. What was the most adventurous thing you did during your childhood?
The most adventurous thing I think was when I overhauled my Ford tractor. When it's you couldn't haul it to town. You didn't have nothing, so I just took it upon myself to do it myself. And I'm was a little mechanical minded, so I could do a lot of that stuff myself. I even overhauled one of my WCL shell track, the bigger ones. They weren't that hard to do, to pull the sleeves and put new rings in it or whatever it took.
Okay. Is there anything else about your childhood memories you'd like to add?
Well, I liked when folks try to go into Montana to see their relatives. I usually enjoyed that, to go along, and where the older girls didn't get to go because they weren't around no more. And when we got the newer cars, and so.
Why do you think it is important to tell your story?
To what? To hire?
Why do you think it's important to tell your story?
Oh, to give the younger generation so they can learn how the Germans from Russia people, when they came over here, how they lived and how they had a struggle to make ends meet. Because I know if even some of our kids, if they'd have to live the way we did, there would have to be a lot of big changes. Because they didn't have everything we didn't have everything in the house that was on the market like they do nowadays. Money wasn't there. That you had to save for your money to buy things. Because by the time the dirty thirties were over with, you had some debts because you had to borrow some money to buy feed and seed, and well, then you had to. But once you could help yourself, you had to pay it back. Even though you could borrow it, you had no problem borrowing money, but that when that time came, you had to pay it back. We didn't have just too much money tied up in feed and seed, but still it had to be paid back. And in order to keep your cattle and all those things, you know, you had to borrow money because there was no feed locally to buy. You had to have it shipped in.
Are there any other thoughts or observations that you'd like to share with us?
Yeah, well, in those days, you know, when I grew up, I mean, you really didn't get no place to where you had to spend money, you know, because you didn't get to town, and you just mostly in your own neighborhood where you went to visit. So it didn't really cost you all that much spending money to. Where later on, you know, when you cars, you know, then you'd drive to town, and you'd, even though gas was cheap, it still, you had to fill gasoline once in a while. And if you wanted to go to a movie or to a dance once in a while, didn't cost that much, but you had to have at least a couple of bucks in your pocket too. Because barn dances, they charge very little to go to barn dances. And that was half a day entertainment, and Sunday nights went most of the while when you did go to town. Yeah, we used to go to quite a few barn dances. But,
What type of music would they play at the barn dances?
the what?
What type of music?
Old time music. That's still my favorite.
Who would throw the barn dance parties?
Usually the farmer that had the barn for it. Good barn, good floor upstairs. Yeah, there was one down here by east of Hillsview, and then there was one southwest of Eureka here that had a good floor, had barn dances quite often. And there was a few around that you could. Then if not, there was Sealand always used to have a lot of dances. Sealand and Hosmer. But so yeah, and we had Herbert Odenbacher had an orchestra for many years. And the brother-in-law to this day says he played piano and accordion, and his dad played the violin, and they'd drag him along to artists to play at the dance of the artists when he was a little kid yet, he said. So, but he's a good piano player, and when he'd come here, first thing he'd do is sit at the piano and play a few old time waltzes and stuff. And same for his dad, old John Odenbacher. He was a church musician for many years. And when he moved to town, and then he'd come over here, his daughter took the piano, so then he'd come over here and sit in the piano and play. We had an old organ, but I never did learn to play it. We had a book, but I don't know, I just didn't get the hang of it. Didn't have enough time, I think, because the only one at home yet, and then I had with chores and everything else, I just didn't learn to play it.
Did anyone else in your family know how to play?
No.
Are there any other thoughts or observations you'd like to share with us?
No, I don't think so. I think it's about the extent of my growing up until.
Alright. Well, thank you very much for spending the day with us and sharing your great stories.
You're welcome.